The bass is the foundation on which great music is built. Your best friends as a pianist will be solid bass players who can support you harmonically and rhythmically and be this kind of bedrock for the band or duo or whatever. That being said, you will, from time to time, find yourself in settings without a bass player. This fact came to be a rude awakening for me in college when I played a few gigs without bass. It was then that I realized I needed to step up my left-hand bass game, and I needed to retain use of my right hand throughout. So this becomes an independence issue. But before we get to that, let's look at bass lines on their own. In order for your bass lines to sound grounded, you want to play lots of roots. That's fine, but what do we play when we're not playing roots? For starters, try arpeggiating the chord, and doing so in such a way that you land on roots right on downbeats. Then, do the same thing with scales. The bebop scales become useful for this as they have 8 notes, and this translates well to 2 bars of 4 quarter notes each. When you're first getting the hang of bass lines, it's good to practice them over a modal tune like New Milestones or So What, where there's limited chord changes and you can just focus on the contour of the line. The general approach for walking bass lines over chord progressions is to voice lead to the root on each chord change. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of voice leading, check out the link in the upper right hand corner right now. You want to feel this continuity through the tune. You want the chord changes to connect to one another. You'll then see that turnarounds are something you want to pay attention to. Those last 2 bars have a quick 1-6-2-5 turnaround with 2 chord changes per measure. So you'll want to get comfortable with these quick turnarounds. Try walking bass lines over rhythm changes. Once you're comfortable enough with landing on roots, you can start to get away from that. A word of warning though, once you get away from roots, things can get pretty harmonically unstable pretty quickly. So be ready to go right back to roots. Try incorporating some inversions into your bass lines. As the bassist, you can help reinforce the harmony by incorporating some of the line cliches you typically hear pianists and guitar players play into your bass lines. Or everybody loves a good pedal point. So these examples are just dealing with the bass lines themselves. At the end of the day, we are being the pianist and the bassist at the same time. So independence is key here. Start off slowly, comping over bass lines. Pick a comping rhythm and stick to it. Then slowly work towards soloing on top of them. You may want to write out a solo and an accompanying bass line just to help conceptualize this way of playing. These techniques will help you come up with decent bass lines on your own, but if you really want to get serious about bass lines, transcribe some bass players. Transcribe walking bass lines by one of the quarter note kings, guys like Paul Chambers or Ray Brown or Ron Carter. So here's a transcription of Ray Brown walking over Green Dolphin Street with the Oscar Peterson Trio. So hopefully this all helps. I always prefer having a bass player than not, but when having one is not an option, you want to be prepared to hold down the bottom end of things. Now, while being without a bass player is not an ideal situation, I think a healthy way of looking at it is focusing more on the freedoms that being bassless allows you rather than the limitations. So rather than kind of getting caught up in the responsibility of having to be the bass player and the pianist, think about the freedoms and liberties this allows you. You get to be the boss of the harmony. And you can take solos where the bass player and the pianist are just harmonically locked in the whole time. You can go into certain harmonic territory you wouldn't normally be able to go into with a bass player. Just be careful not to go too far off the rails. So that's all for now. Please like and subscribe, stay tuned for more videos, and as always, happy practicing.